I'm sitting in my late husband's chair right now, wrapped in his old sweater even though it's summer and the heat makes everything slow down. The fan spins all day long, but I still wear it. You know what I mean? Some things you just need, and it doesn't matter if they make sense. That chair and that sweater, they're the only two things left that smell like him, and honestly, I was holding on to them for dear life when everything started falling apart. My name is Rosa, and I'm about to tell you something I never thought I'd share with anybody. Not my daughter, not my priest, nobody. But I think there's someone out there who needs to hear this because what happened to me happens to so many of us, and we suffer in silence. So I'm going to lay it all out. If this helps even one person, then at least the pain meant something. Before I go any further, I need to ask you something. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever been called a liar when you were telling the truth, could you take a second and hit that like button? It helps this story reach other people who need to hear it. And subscribe if you want to be part of a community that believes survivors. Because that's what we are. Survivors. I live here in Newark, in a senior living studio with a kitchenette and a shared hallway. I moved here after my husband passed 6 years ago. The neighborhood outside is still the same working-class area where we raised our family. Brick row houses, small porches, people who know each other. My daughter lives not too far away now, the one who still loves me. But back then, when everything happened, she didn't believe me. None of them did. Let me back up. I have a nephew, Miguel, my sister's boy. He was always the charming one, you know? Good job, nice clothes, drove a Tesla Model S in midnight silver that made everyone at church turn their heads. He'd come around asking if I needed help with money stuff, bills, my late husband's accounts. I'd been a widow for a while, and honestly, I was tired. I was 50 years old, but I felt ancient. My body was wearing down, and I didn't have the energy to think about numbers and banks and all that. So when Miguel said, "Tia, let me help you organize this," I said yes. That was the mistake. Or maybe the mistake was my resignation to everything. I felt too old to fight, too powerless. I just accepted things. That's who I'd become. For 3 years, I didn't pay close attention. Miguel would handle things, and I'd spend my time like I always did, organizing my old photographs into albums, sitting with my collection of funeral programs from people I've lost, drinking sweet tea from the plastic pitcher I keep in my refrigerator. I even had my wooden jewelry box with a broken latch sitting on the nightstand, the one my mother gave me. I wasn't really living, you know? I was just existing in this room with my memories. The studio is small. When you walk in, there's the kitchenette immediately to your left, barely enough counter space for the coffee maker and the toaster. The main room is maybe 12 by 12 feet. My late husband's chair sits by the window where the fan is. I keep the curtains half drawn because the afternoon sun gets brutal in summer, and the building doesn't have central air. Just that fan, spinning and spinning. The shared hallway outside smells like other people's cooking. Arroz con pollo, somebody's spaghetti sauce. You hear footsteps at all hours. Mrs. Chen from 2 doors down shuffles past every morning at 6:30 to get her newspaper. Mr. Davis plays his television too loud at night. I'd sit in that chair wearing my navy blue dress with white polka dots on days I had appointments, though I rarely had anywhere to go. Most days it was just a nightgown. I'd organize photographs, the same ones over and over. Me and my husband at our wedding. My daughter as a baby. Family gatherings where everyone's still alive. I had my wooden jewelry box there, my mother's jewelry box, and even though the latch was broken, I'd open it sometimes just to touch the few pieces inside. A fake pearl necklace, some earrings that had lost their shine. Nothing valuable, but it was mine. That's how I spent those years. Quiet. Alone. Waiting, I guess. For what, I didn't know. Miguel would visit maybe once a month. He'd bring groceries sometimes, help me change a light bulb, talk about his job in finance. He worked for some investment firm in Manhattan, took the train in every day, wore expensive suits. He'd sit where I'm sitting now and say things like, "Tia, you don't need to worry about the bills, I've got it handled. You just rest." And I believed him because I wanted to believe him. Because it was easier than facing the numbers myself. Because I was tired. I had been so many things for so many years. I'd been a wife, a mother, a caretaker. I'd worked as a home health aide for 30 years, taking care of other people's elderly parents while my own health started to fail. I had diabetes. My knees hurt. I had this persistent cough that I kept meaning to get checked but never did. By the time I turned 50, I felt like I'd lived 3 lifetimes and I didn't have the energy for a 4th. So when Miguel said, "Let me help," I just let him. I signed papers. I gave him access to accounts. I trusted him because he was family. Because my sister would call and say, "Miguel's doing so well, Rosa. He's making such good money. He's so responsible." And I thought, yes, he is. He's helping me. I'm lucky to have him. God, I was so stupid. Chapter 2. You want to know what I sacrificed? Everything. My whole life was sacrifice, one after another. Like I was born to give pieces of myself away until there was nothing left. I raised my daughter mostly on my own after her father died. He had a heart attack when she was 12, just dropped dead one day in the parking lot at work, 46 years old. I was 32. They said it was sudden, like that made it better. Like sudden was a kindness. I spent the next 18 years working 2 jobs, making sure she had what she needed, making sure she went to college, making sure she never felt the poverty that was crushing me every single day. I worked as a home health aide during the day and cleaned offices at night. I'd get home at 2 in the morning and be back up at 6 to get my daughter ready for school. I remember standing at the stove making her breakfast, scrambling eggs in the same pan I'd used for 20 years, and my hands would shake from exhaustion. But I did it. Every day. Because that's what mothers do, right? We sacrifice. When she went to college, I thought maybe I'd get a break. Maybe I could slow down. But then my mother got sick. Dementia. She needed care, and of course, it fell to me. My sister had Miguel to raise. She couldn't help. My brother lived in California and sent a check once a year like that absolved him of everything. So I took care of my mother. I quit the night cleaning job, but kept the home health aide work because at least I knew what I was doing. At least I was good at it. I'd bring my mother to my apartment and she'd sit in that same chair, my late husband's chair, and she wouldn't recognize me half the time. She'd ask where her husband was. He'd been dead for 15 years. She'd ask when dinner was ready, and I'd already fed her twice that day. I was patient. I was kind. I held her hand when she cried. I changed her when she had accidents. I did it all without complaint because that's what daughters do. We sacrifice. My mother died when I was 47. 3 months later, I met Richard. He was a widower, a carpenter, a good man with rough hands and a soft voice. We got married quickly, and for 3 years I was happy. Actually happy. We'd sit together in the evenings, him in his chair and me on the couch, and we'd watch old movies and drink sweet tea. He taught me how to organize photographs properly, how to preserve them in albums so they wouldn't fade. We spent hours going through old pictures together, him telling me stories about his first wife, me telling him about my late husband, and it wasn't sad. It was just honest. He had a small pension, I had Social Security and a little savings. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. We'd talk about traveling someday. Maybe going to see the Grand Canyon. Maybe visiting my daughter who'd moved upstate after college. We never did any of it. Richard had a stroke and died 6 months before I turned 50. That's when everything stopped. That's when I moved into this studio because I couldn't afford the apartment anymore. That's when I started sitting in his chair wearing his sweater even in summer, because it was the only thing that felt real. That's when Miguel started coming around, offering to help. I had maybe $70,000 in savings. It was everything I'd worked for my entire life, my security, my safety net. And I handed it over piece by piece because Miguel said he could invest it, grow it, make it work for me. He said, "Tia, you worked so hard you deserve to retire comfortably. Let me help you build a future." And I believed him. I stopped buying new clothes. I wore the same navy blue dress with white polka dots to church every Sunday because it was the only nice thing I had left. I stopped going to the doctor even when my chest hurt and my cough got worse. I told myself it was just age, just exhaustion, just grief. I ignored every warning sign my body gave me because I believed I was being taken care of. I believed Miguel was handling things. I'd open the refrigerator and see that plastic pitcher of sweet tea and wonder why I even bothered making it. Nobody visited except Miguel, and he didn't drink tea. I'd sit with my funeral programs, reading the names of people I'd lost. My husband, my mother, friends from church who'd passed over the years. I kept them all in a small wooden box, my mother's jewelry box, the one with the broken latch. I'd go through them like rosary beads, counting the dead, feeling myself get closer to joining them. My faith was the only thing left. I'd go to Mass every Sunday, sit in the same pew, light a candle for Richard. I'd pray for my daughter, pray she was happy in her life upstate with her husband and her job. She didn't visit much, maybe twice a year. We'd talk on the phone once a month, short conversations where she'd ask if I was okay, and I'd say yes because what else was I supposed to say? That I was lonely? That I was scared? That I felt myself disappearing? I used to have a hobby. I used to organize photographs, make albums, preserve memories. But after Richard died, I couldn't even do that anymore. I'd pull out the boxes of pictures and just stare at them. Me as a young woman, me with my first husband, me holding my baby daughter, me with my mother, me with Richard. All these versions of myself that didn't exist anymore. I'd put them back in the boxes and close the lids and think, what's the point? Miguel would come and he'd see me like that, sitting in the chair with my dead husband's sweater wrapped around me, even though it was 90 degrees outside, and he'd say, "Tia, you need to take care of yourself." And I'd nod and agree and do nothing. Because I'd resigned myself to this life, this small studio, this shared hallway, this existence of waiting to die. I gave up everything. My health, my comfort, my will to live. I sacrificed it all because I thought I was being a good aunt, a good family member, a good woman. I thought if I was quiet and grateful and didn't ask for too much, then at least I wouldn't be a burden. At least I wouldn't cause trouble. That's what they teach us, isn't it? Be quiet, be grateful, don't complain, sacrifice everything and call it love. I believed it. God help me. I believed every word. Chapter 3. The beginning of the end came on a Tuesday in July. I remember because Tuesdays were when I'd go down to the community room in the building for bingo. It was the one thing I still did. The one time each week I'd see other people. Mrs. Chen would be there, Mr. Davis, a few others. We'd play for an hour and drink bad coffee and pretend we were having fun. I didn't go that Tuesday. I woke up with that chest pain again, worse than usual, and I thought maybe I should rest. I was sitting in the chair by the window, the fan spinning when my phone buzzed. A text message from my bank. Account alert. Large withdrawal. I stared at it for a long time before I opened it. $5,000. Withdrawn from my savings account. I hadn't made any withdrawal. I called the bank, my hands shaking so bad I could barely hold the phone. The woman on the other end was patient, kind. She asked me security questions. She pulled up my account. She said, "Ma'am, This withdrawal was made online using your login credentials. Do you have your debit card? I did. It was in my purse. She said, Ma'am, I'm going to transfer you to our fraud department. The fraud department asked more questions. When was the last time I'd accessed my account? Did I share my login information with anyone? Had I noticed any other unusual activity? I felt sick. My stomach turned over and over. They put a hold on the account and said someone would call me back within 24 hours. I sat in that chair and I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I looked around the studio, at my wooden jewelry box with the broken latch, at the funeral programs in their small box, at the photographs scattered on the table. Everything felt contaminated suddenly, like the air itself was poisoned. The next day, a representative from the fraud department called. They'd reviewed the account activity going back 3 years. There had been multiple unauthorized transactions, transfers to external accounts, credit cards opened in my name, a personal loan I'd never applied for. The total amount was over $60,000. $60,000, almost everything I had. I asked who had done it. They said the transactions appeared to be internal, someone with access to my accounts and personal information. They asked again if I'd shared my login information with anyone. And I knew. Of course I knew. I'd given Miguel everything: power of attorney, account access, my social security number, my trust. I didn't tell him I knew. I couldn't. I was too shocked, too broken. I went to the bank in person and met with a manager. I brought every document I could find, every statement, every piece of paper Miguel had ever given me to sign. The manager was a young woman, maybe 30, with kind eyes. She reviewed everything and then looked at me and said, Ma'am, I'm so sorry, but it appears you've been a victim of financial exploitation. Financial exploitation. Such clean words for such a dirty thing. She explained the next steps. File a police report, document everything, consider getting a lawyer. She gave me pamphlets about elder abuse, resources for victims, phone numbers for agencies that could help. I took them all and put them in my purse and walked out of that bank feeling like I'd been gutted. I went home and I sat in the chair and I thought about what to do. Part of me wanted to call Miguel and scream at him. Part of me wanted to call my daughter and tell her. Part of me wanted to do nothing at all. Just sit there and let it destroy me because maybe that's what I deserved for being so stupid. But I couldn't do nothing. Something in me, some small spark that I thought had died years ago, refused to go quietly. I printed out the bank statements. I made copies of everything. I wrote down dates and amounts in a notebook. I documented it all, every transaction, every lie. And then I decided to tell my family. I thought they'd support me. I thought they'd be angry on my behalf. I thought my daughter would believe me. I was wrong about all of it. I called my daughter and asked if I could come to dinner at her house that Sunday. She sounded surprised. I didn't visit often. She said yes, of course, and asked if everything was okay. I said it was fine. I just wanted to see her. Miguel would be there too, she said. He'd been helping her with some financial planning. Of course he had. That Sunday, I put on my navy blue dress with white polka dots. I did my makeup. I carried the folder of documents in my purse like it was a weapon. I took the bus to her house, a nice split level in a quiet neighborhood about 40 minutes away. When I arrived, Miguel's Tesla was already in the driveway, midnight silver, gleaming. Dinner was roast chicken and rice. My daughter had made sweet tea because she knew I liked it. Miguel was charming, as always. He asked how I was feeling, said I looked well, complimented the dress. I smiled and nodded and waited until dessert was served. Then I put the folder on the table. I said, I need to tell you something. And I laid it all out. The unauthorized withdrawals, the credit cards, the loan, the $60,000. I showed them the bank statements. I showed them the fraud department's findings. I looked at Miguel and said, You did this. You stole from me. My daughter's face went pale. Miguel's face did something different. It crumpled. His eyes filled with tears. He looked at me like I'd stabbed him. He said, Tia, what are you talking about? You gave me permission for everything. You asked me to help you manage your accounts. You're confused. I said, I never gave you permission to steal $60,000. He stood up. He was shaking. He said, I can't believe you're accusing me of this. I've done nothing but help you. I've sacrificed my time, my energy, trying to take care of you because you're family. And this is how you repay me? By calling me a thief. My daughter looked at the papers. She looked at me. She looked at Miguel. And I saw her choose. I saw it happen in real time. She said, Mom, are you sure about this? Miguel's been helping you for years. Maybe you just forgot authorizing these transactions. You've been under a lot of stress. I felt something crack inside me, something fundamental. I said, I didn't forget. I didn't authorize this. He stole from me. Miguel was crying now, actual tears running down his face. He said, I love you, Tia. I would never hurt you. I think you need to see a doctor. I think maybe the grief, the stress, maybe it's affecting your memory. My daughter reached across the table and took his hand. She said, Mom, I think Miguel might be right. Maybe we should get you checked out. Make sure everything's okay. I gathered up my papers. I stood up. I looked at my daughter and I said, He's lying. And you're choosing to believe him over me. She said, Mom, please. You're not thinking clearly. I walked out of that house and took the bus home, and I understood for the first time in my life what real loneliness felt like. Not the loneliness of being widowed or the loneliness of an empty apartment. The loneliness of being alive and having no one believe you. The loneliness of telling the truth and being called a liar. When I got back to the studio, I couldn't even cry. I just stood in the middle of the room and looked at everything. The chair, the jewelry box, the photographs, the funeral programs. Everything that represented my life, my memories, my past. And I hated all of it. I picked up the wooden jewelry box, my mother's jewelry box, the one with the broken latch. I held it for a moment, and then I threw it against the wall as hard as I could. It shattered. The latch broke completely off. The fake pearl necklace scattered across the floor. The earrings bounced and rolled under the bed. Photographs spilled everywhere, dozens of them that I'd kept hidden in the bottom of the box. Pictures of my mother, my first husband, my daughter as a baby. All of them scattered like garbage. I dropped to my knees and I couldn't stop shaking. My chest hurt. My hands hurt. Everything hurt. I crawled to the chair and pulled myself up and wrapped my late husband's sweater around me, and I thought, this is how I die. This is how it ends. Alone in a studio apartment with a broken jewelry box and a family that thinks I'm crazy. I sat there for hours, maybe days. I don't remember. Time stopped meaning anything. Chapter 4. The calls started a few days later. First my daughter, then my sister, Miguel's mother, then cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. All of them saying the same things. Are you okay? Are you confused? Are you sure about what you said? Miguel's so upset. You really hurt him. Nobody asked if I was hurt. Nobody asked if I was okay beyond the implication that I must be mentally unwell. Nobody looked at the evidence. They just believed him. Charming Miguel with his Tesla and his finance job and his tears. My daughter called every day for a week. Her tone changed from concerned to frustrated to angry. She'd say things like, Mom, you're being stubborn. Mom, you're not seeing this clearly. Mom, please just apologize to Miguel so we can move past this. Apologize. To the man who stole $60,000 from me. I stopped answering her calls. I stopped answering anyone's calls. I let the phone ring and I sat in the chair wearing the sweater and I thought about dying. Not killing myself, just dying. Just closing my eyes and not opening them again. It felt like it would be easier than this. My chest pain got worse. I ignored it. I stopped eating much. I'd open the refrigerator and see the sweet tea and think, what's the point? I'd make a piece of toast and eat half of it and throw the rest away. I lost weight. My clothes hung loose on my body. The navy blue dress with white polka dots looked like it belonged to someone else. I stopped going to church. I couldn't face the questions, the concerned looks, the whispers. Miguel's mother went to the same church. I couldn't sit in the same building as her. The studio became a prison. I'd watch the fan spin and think, this is my life now. This is all there is. I'd go through the funeral programs, reading names, wondering when my own name would be on one of those programs. Who would come to my funeral? If anyone would cry, or if they'd just be relieved I was finally gone. The wooden jewelry box stayed broken on the floor for weeks. I'd step over the pieces, over the scattered photographs, and I couldn't bring myself to clean it up. It felt right somehow. Everything broken, everything destroyed. Then one night in August, the chest pain got so bad I couldn't breathe. I was sitting in the chair and suddenly it felt like someone had put a vice around my heart and was squeezing. I couldn't get air. My left arm went numb. I tried to stand and fell to my knees. I managed to reach my phone and call 911. I don't remember much after that. The paramedics, the ambulance, the hospital lights too bright overhead, someone asking me questions I couldn't answer. I woke up in the emergency room. A doctor was saying something about tests, monitoring, possible heart attack. A nurse was checking my blood pressure. And then I heard a voice I recognized. Patricia, Miguel's ex-girlfriend. I'd met her a few times over the years, back when she and Miguel were together. She'd always been kind to me, quiet, thoughtful. They'd broken up about a year ago. I didn't know why. I didn't know she was a nurse. She came over to my bed and her eyes went wide. She said, Rosa? Tia Rosa? Oh my God. I tried to speak but couldn't. She took my hand and squeezed it and said, It's okay. You're okay. We're taking care of you. The doctor explained that I'd had a severe angina attack. Not a heart attack, but close. My heart was under stress. They wanted to keep me overnight for observation. They asked about my medical history, medications, recent stress. Patricia stayed next to me while I tried to answer. When I mentioned I hadn't been eating well, hadn't been to a doctor in over a year, had been under extreme emotional strain, Patricia's expression changed. After the doctor left, Patricia pulled up a chair. She said, What happened? The last time I saw you, you were okay. You seemed okay. And I told her. Everything. Miguel. The money. The family. The dinner. The disbelief. The loneliness. The resignation. The broken jewelry box. All of it. Patricia listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said something that changed everything. She said, He did the same thing to me. I stared at her. She said, When we were together, he opened credit cards in my name. He took out a loan using my information. By the time I found out, he'd destroyed my credit. When I confronted him, he cried and said I was mistaken, that I must have forgotten, that I was confused. He made me feel crazy. When I tried to tell his mother, she didn't believe me. She said I was just bitter about the breakup. She paused and then said, I have evidence. I kept everything. Every document, every statement, every text message. I've been too scared to do anything with it because I thought no one would believe me. But if he's done this to you too, then we can stop him. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than despair. I felt anger. Real, hot, clarifying anger. I said, What do we do? She said, First you get better, then we fight. The next morning, the doctor said my heart was stable, but I needed to follow up with a cardiologist, manage my stress, take better care of myself. Patricia arranged for a social worker to meet with me before I was discharged. The social worker's name was Linda, and she specialized in elder abuse cases. Linda sat with me and Patricia in a small private room. She explained that what Miguel had done was financial exploitation, a form of elder abuse. She said it was more common than people think. She said families often side with the abuser because they're charming, because they seem trustworthy, because it's easier than believing the victim. She said I had options. I could file a police report. I could pursue civil charges. I could work with the district attorney's office. She gave me resources, phone numbers, agencies that could help. She said, "You don't have to do this alone." Patricia said, "I'll help. I'll testify. I'll give you my evidence." Linda said, "With 2 victims and documentation, you have a strong case." I left that hospital with a follow-up appointment, a list of resources, and something I hadn't had in months. Hope. Actual hope. Patricia drove me home in her car. When we pulled up to my building, she said, "I'm not going to let him get away with this. Not again. He made me feel powerless, but I'm not powerless. And neither are you." I believed her. For the first time in so long, I believed someone. Chapter 5. The next few weeks were a blur of documentation and meetings. Patricia came to my studio and we spread everything out on the small table. My bank statements, her bank statements, credit card bills, loan documents, text messages, emails. We organized it all chronologically, creating a timeline of Miguel's theft. Mine went back 3 years, hers went back 4. Together, we'd been robbed of over $100,000. Patricia was methodical. She had a notebook where she wrote down every detail, dates, amounts, locations. She'd worked in fraud investigation before becoming a nurse, and it showed. She knew exactly what we needed. We filed a police report together. The detective assigned to the case was a woman in her 50s named Detective Morrison. She listened to our story without judgment. She reviewed our documentation. She said, "This is textbook financial exploitation. You have a very strong case." She explained the process. The police would investigate. They'd interview Miguel. They'd subpoena bank records. If they found sufficient evidence, the district attorney's office would decide whether to press charges. It could take months. I said, "What if they don't believe us?" She said, "They'll believe the documents. Numbers don't lie." Patricia and I also went to see a lawyer, a woman named Sarah Chen who specialized in elder abuse cases. She worked for a nonprofit that provided free legal services to seniors. Sarah reviewed everything and said we had grounds for a civil suit. We could sue Miguel for restitution, for damages, for legal fees. She said, "Even if the criminal case doesn't go the way we want, we can still hold him accountable." I asked, "How long will it take?" She said, "Months, maybe years. But we'll win." The evidence is overwhelming. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was doing something instead of just enduring. I wasn't sitting in that chair waiting to die anymore. I was fighting. One afternoon, Patricia helped me go through the studio and clean up. We picked up the broken jewelry box, the scattered photographs, the pieces of my life that I'd destroyed in despair. She was gentle, careful. She'd pick up a photograph and ask me about it, and I'd tell her the story. My first husband, my mother, my daughter as a baby, Richard. She said, "You've loved so many people." I said, "And they all left." She said, "No. You're still here. You're still loving. That's the miracle." We threw away the broken jewelry box but kept the photographs. Patricia bought me a new album and we organized them together. It felt like putting my life back in order, one picture at a time. I also started taking care of myself again. I went to see the cardiologist. He put me on medication for my heart, told me to reduce stress, eat better, exercise if I could. I started making real meals again. Not much, but something. Eggs in the morning, a sandwich for lunch. I'd sit at the small table in the kitchenette and eat slowly, tasting food for the first time in months. I stopped wearing my late husband's sweater every day. I folded it carefully and put it on the shelf in the closet. I still kept it. I still loved it. But I didn't need to wear it like armor anymore. One Saturday, I took a bag of old clothes down to the church donation box. Things that didn't fit anymore. Things I didn't wear. Things that represented who I used to be. I stood in front of that donation box for a long time before I dropped the bag in. It felt like liberation, like letting go of weight I'd been carrying for years. Patricia was there with me. She said, "How does it feel?" I said, light. I feel light. That night, I slept better than I had in years. No nightmares, no chest pain, just sleep. Deep, dreamless, healing sleep. The studio started to feel different too. Less like a prison, more like a home. I opened the curtains all the way and let the light in. I cleaned. I organized. I bought a small plant from the bodega down the street and put it on the windowsill. Just a little succulent that didn't need much care. But it was alive, it was growing, and it made the room feel less empty. I started going back to bingo on Tuesdays. Mrs. Chen was happy to see me. She said, "Where have you been? We missed you." I didn't tell her everything. I just said I'd been sick, but I was better now. She squeezed my hand and said, "Good. Good." The community room felt different too. Or maybe I felt different. I wasn't just going through the motions anymore. I was actually present. Actually there. I laughed at Mr. Davis's bad jokes. I drank the terrible coffee. I played bingo and I didn't even care if I won. Patricia and I met every week to review the case, to prepare for interviews with the police, to organize new documents. We became friends. Real friends. She'd tell me about her life, her work at the hospital, her dog, her plans to go back to school. I'd tell her about my past, my marriages, my daughter, my regrets. One day she said, "You know what I admire about you? You didn't give up. Even when everyone turned against you, you kept going." I said, "I wanted to give up. I almost did." She said, "But you didn't. That's what matters." I thought about that a lot. How close I'd come to just disappearing. How easy it would have been to let the despair win. But something in me, some stubborn spark, had refused. And now I was here. Fighting, living, hoping. Chapter 6. The confrontation came in September. Miguel called me for the first time since the dinner. His voice on the phone was different. Harder. He said, "Tia, we need to talk." I said, "About what?" He said, "The police contacted me. About your accusations. About the money. This is getting out of hand." I said, "It's not an accusation. It's the truth." He said, "We should meet. Just you and me. We can clear this up." I said, "No. Everything goes through my lawyer now." He was quiet. Then he said, "You're really going to do this? You're really going to destroy our family over a misunderstanding?" I said, "You destroyed our family when you stole from me." He hung up. 2 days later, my daughter called. She said, "Mom, Miguel told me the police contacted him. What have you done?" I said, "I filed a report, like I should have done from the beginning." She said, "This is insane. You're tearing the family apart. Over money. Over a misunderstanding." I said, "It's not a misunderstanding. He stole from me. $60,000. And he stole from his ex-girlfriend too. We have proof." She was quiet. Then she said, "Patricia? You're working with Patricia?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Mom, she's his ex. She's bitter. She's lying to you." I said, "She has documentation, bank statements, credit card bills, everything." My daughter made a sound like a sob. She said, "I can't believe you're doing this. Miguel is family. He's been nothing but good to us. He's been helping me with my finances. He's been there for me when you haven't been." That hurt. It hurt so much I couldn't speak. She said, "If you go through with this, I don't know if I can have a relationship with you." I said, "Then I guess you're making your choice." She hung up. I sat in the chair by the window and I cried. Not because I was sad, because I was angry. Because my own daughter was choosing him over me. Because I'd spent my entire life sacrificing for her and this was how she repaid me. But I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. Sarah Chen, my lawyer, called the next week. She said, "We have a court date for the civil suit. 3 months from now." The detective also said the DA is moving forward with criminal charges, fraud, identity theft, elder exploitation. They're taking it seriously. I said, "What happens now?" She said, "Now we prepare. We get ready to tell your story in court. We make sure Miguel faces consequences." Patricia and I met at her apartment to prepare. She had a nicer place than mine, a one-bedroom with actual rooms instead of just a studio. We sat at her kitchen table and went through every piece of evidence again. She'd made copies of everything, organized everything in binders with tabs and labels. She was so thorough, so careful. She said, "When we go to court, they're going to try to make us look unreliable. They're going to say we're confused or bitter or lying. We have to be unshakable." I said, "I'm scared." She said, "Me too. But we're not alone. We have each other." The surprise came in October. Miguel had planned a family gathering for his mother's birthday. A big party at a restaurant in Newark, the kind of place with cloth napkins and expensive wine. My sister called and invited me. She said, "Rosa, please come. Please don't let this conflict ruin our family." I said I'd think about it. Patricia said, "You should go, but not alone. I'll come with you." Sarah Chen said, "It's risky. Anything you say could be used against you." But I wanted to go. I wanted to face them. I wanted them to see that I wasn't confused or crazy or lying. I wanted them to see that I was still here, still standing. Patricia picked me up that Saturday evening. I wore my navy blue dress with white polka dots. She wore something simple and professional. We drove to the restaurant in her car. I saw Miguel's Tesla in the parking lot, midnight silver, still gleaming. Inside, the private room was full of family. My sister, my daughter, Miguel, cousins and aunts and uncles I hadn't seen in months. They all stopped talking when I walked in with Patricia. My sister came over and hugged me. She whispered, "Please don't make a scene." I said, "I'm just here to celebrate your birthday." Miguel was across the room. He stared at me, then at Patricia. His face went pale. We sat down at the end of the long table. People were cordial but distant. They'd say hello and then turn away. They'd talk to each other, but not to me. I felt like a ghost at my own family gathering. Dinner was served. I barely ate. I just watched. Watched Miguel play the perfect nephew, the perfect son, the perfect cousin. Watched him laugh and joke and tell stories. Watched everyone adore him. Then, during dessert, my daughter stood up. She said, "I want to say something. I want to thank Miguel for everything he's done for this family. For helping me with my finances. For taking care of Tia Rosa when she needed it. For being there for all of us." People clapped. Miguel smiled. My daughter continued, "And I want to say that I'm sorry for the conflict that's happening. I hope we can move past it and remember that family is the most important thing." More clapping. I stood up. The room went quiet. I said, "I also want to say something." My sister said, "Rosa, please." I said, "Miguel stole $60,000 from me. He opened credit cards in my name. He took out a loan I never authorized. He destroyed my financial security. And he did the same thing to Patricia when they were together. We have proof. Bank statements, credit reports, everything. The police are investigating. The district attorney is pressing charges. There's going to be a trial. And when it's over, everyone in this room will know the truth." Silence. Miguel stood up. His face was red. He said, "This is slander. I'm going to sue you." I said, "Go ahead. My lawyer's ready." My daughter was crying. My sister was shaking her head. Cousins were whispering to each other. Patricia stood up next to me. She said, "He did the same thing to me. $70,000. I have proof, too. We're not lying. We're not confused. We're victims. And we're not staying quiet anymore." Miguel left, just walked out of the restaurant. His mother followed him. Other people started leaving, too. The party dissolved. My daughter wouldn't even look at me. Patricia and I left and sat in her car in the parking lot. I was shaking. She said, "You did it. You told them." I said, "They didn't believe me." She said, "They will. When the trial happens, when the evidence comes out, They'll have to believe. But I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure about anything except that I'd crossed a line. There was no going back now. Chapter 7. The weeks after the confrontation were brutal. My sister called and said I was no longer welcome at family gatherings. My daughter stopped answering my calls entirely. Cousins unfriended me on social media. It felt like I'd been erased. But Patricia stayed. And Sarah Chen stayed. And Detective Morrison kept investigating. Then, in November, something happened that I didn't expect. The district attorney's office contacted Sarah. They'd uncovered something during their investigation. Miguel had been stealing from his employer, embezzling. They'd found irregularities in the company's accounts that traced back to him. The company was cooperating with the investigation. Miguel was fired, arrested, charged with multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, identity theft, and elder exploitation. The news spread through the family like wildfire. My sister called me crying. She said, "They arrested him. They took him away in handcuffs." "How could this happen?" I said. "Because he's a thief. Because he's been stealing from everyone. From me. From Patricia. From his employer. Because he's not who you thought he was." She hung up. 2 days later, my daughter showed up at my studio. She looked terrible. Eyes red. Face pale. She said, "Can I come in?" I let her in. She stood in the middle of the room and she said, "The detective called me. She showed me the evidence, the bank statements, the credit reports, the documents from Miguel's employer. She said he stole over $200,000 total. From you, from Patricia, from his company. And that he used some of my information too. He opened a credit card in my name. I didn't even know. I didn't say anything." She said, "I'm so sorry, Mom. I didn't believe you. I chose him over you. I called you confused. I said terrible things. I was so wrong." She started crying, real ugly crying. I said, "Why didn't you believe me?" She said, "Because it was easier to believe him. Because you've always been so quiet, so resigned. Because he was successful and charming and it seemed impossible that he could do something like that. Because I didn't want it to be true." I said, "You hurt me more than he did." She said, I know. I'm so sorry." We stood there in that small studio and I realized something. I wasn't angry at her anymore. I was just sad. Sad that it had taken this much for her to believe me. Sad that I'd lost so much time with her. Sad that our relationship would never be the same. But I also realized something else. I'd survived. Without her belief, without her support, I'd survived. I'd found allies. I'd fought back. I'd stood up. And I'd won. I said, "I forgive you. But things are different now." She nodded. She said, "I understand." She left shortly after. We didn't hug. We didn't make plans. We just acknowledged the damage and moved on. The trial happened in December. It was quick. Miguel's lawyer tried to argue that the transactions were authorized, that there were misunderstandings, that the prosecution couldn't prove intent. But the evidence was overwhelming. Patricia testified. I testified. The bank's fraud investigator testified. Miguel's former employer testified. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 5 years in prison and ordered him to pay full restitution to all victims. Over $200,000. He'd have to sell his Tesla, his condo, everything. He'd be financially destroyed. When the sentence was read, I felt something unexpected. Not joy, not satisfaction, just relief. Just the sense that it was finally over. Patricia and I stood on the courthouse steps afterward. It was cold. Winter had come. She said, "We did it." I said, "We did." Sarah Chen said, "You should be proud. Both of you. You fought back when it would have been easier to stay silent. You helped bring a predator to justice." I said, "What happens now?" She said, "Now you rebuild. Now you live. Chapter 8. Rebuilding was harder than I expected. The restitution money came slowly. The court ordered Miguel to pay, but he didn't have it all immediately. He had to sell his assets. It would take months, maybe years, to get everything back. But I was patient. I'd waited this long. I could wait a little longer. Patricia helped me open a new bank account, one that Miguel had never touched. We set up security measures, fraud alerts, everything. She helped me understand my finances in a way I never had before. She showed me how to read statements, how to spot irregularities, how to protect myself. I started going to a support group for elder abuse survivors. It met once a week at the senior center, run by a social worker named Marcus. There were 8 of us, all ages, all stories, all victims of family members who'd stolen from us, manipulated us, exploited us. Hearing their stories, I realized how common this was, how many of us suffered in silence, how many of us blamed ourselves, how many of us lost family relationships because we dared to speak up. But I also saw strength in that room. I saw people rebuilding their lives. I saw people setting boundaries. I saw people choosing themselves for the first time. Marcus said, "Elder abuse thrives in silence. It thrives in shame. When we speak up, when we support each other, we break that cycle." I started volunteering at the senior center. Nothing big, just helping people with basic financial tasks, balancing checkbooks, reading bank statements, asking questions. I'd sit with someone and say, "Do you understand this charge? Did you authorize this transaction?" If something feels wrong, trust that feeling. I became what I wish I'd had. Someone who believed. Someone who listened. Someone who helped. My relationship with my daughter slowly improved. She'd call once a week. She'd visit once a month. We didn't talk about Miguel. We didn't talk about the trial. We just talked about small things. Her job, her garden, the weather. One day she said, "I found you a house." I said, "What?" She said, "A house. Near me. A small 1-bedroom with a yard. It's for sale. I thought maybe you'd want to see it." We drove out to look at it. It was perfect. Small but not too small. A real kitchen, a real bedroom, a yard with a tree. Close enough to my daughter that I could walk there if I wanted. I said, "I can't afford this." She said, "The restitution money will cover most of it, and I can help with the rest, if you want." I looked at her. I said, "Why?" She said, "Because I want you close. Because I want to make up for the time we lost. Because I love you, Mom. I bought the house. Moved in February. Patricia helped me pack up the studio, helped me move, helped me set up the new place. She hung curtains. She arranged furniture. She put the wooden jewelry box, the new one she'd bought me, on the dresser in my bedroom. I said, "I don't know how to thank you." She said, "You already did. You gave me my power back. You showed me I could fight. That's everything." The house felt like a dream. I'd wake up in the morning in a real bedroom with real windows, and I'd think, is this real? Is this my life now? I kept my late husband's sweater, but I didn't wear it every day anymore. I kept the funeral programs, but I didn't go through them like rosary beads. I kept the photographs, but I looked at them with different eyes. Not as symbols of loss, as symbols of love. I'd loved people. People had loved me. That was real. That mattered. I planted flowers in the yard, roses, marigolds, tulips for the spring. I'd never had a yard before, never had space to grow things. Now I spent hours out there, digging in the dirt, watering, watching things bloom. My daughter would come over and we'd sit on the small back porch and drink sweet tea. Real sweet tea that I made in a real glass pitcher. We'd talk about nothing important. Just talk. Just be together. One day she said, "I'm proud of you, Mom." I said, "For what?" She said, for fighting back, for not giving up, for being stronger than I ever knew you could be. I said, I didn't feel strong. She said, but you were. You are. Chapter 9. It's been 8 months since the trial. 8 months since I moved into this house. 8 months since I started living instead of just existing. I still volunteer at the senior center. I still go to the support group. I still help people understand their bank statements, ask questions, trust their instincts. And I tell them what I learned, what I wish someone had told me. I learned that people over 60 lost more money to scams and financial abuse than any other age group in 2023. More than any other age group. We're targets. We're vulnerable. We're often isolated and trusting and desperate for connection. And predators know that. They exploit that. I learned that research indicates only 5% of abused Latino seniors report to authorities. Only 5%. That means 98.5% of us suffer in silence. Because we're ashamed. Because we don't think anyone will believe us. Because we're scared of losing family. Because we think we're too old to matter. But we do matter. Our stories matter. Our pain matters. And we deserve justice. I tell people, if something feels wrong, it probably is. If someone is handling your money and you don't understand what they're doing, ask questions. Demand transparency. Keep records. Document everything. Dates, amounts, transactions, everything. And if someone steals from you, if someone exploits you, if someone abuses you, report it. Tell someone, tell everyone, file a police report, call a lawyer, contact Adult Protective Services. Don't suffer in silence. Don't accept it. Don't resign yourself to it. You are not too old. You are not powerless. You are not confused. You are a victim of a crime, and you deserve justice. I also tell people about allies. How sometimes the help comes from unexpected places. How Patricia, Miguel's ex-girlfriend, became my strongest supporter. How she gave me my power back. How we fought together and won together. Find your allies. Build your support system. You don't have to do this alone. And I tell people about forgiveness. How I had to forgive my daughter, even though what she did hurt me more than anything Miguel did. How forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean excusing. It just means choosing to move forward without carrying all that weight. I'm sitting on my back porch right now. It's summer again. The fan is spinning inside, but out here there's a breeze. The roses are blooming. The marigolds are bright and cheerful. The tulips already came and went, but they'll be back next spring. My daughter is coming over for dinner tonight. We do that now. Once a week. She brings groceries and we cook together. We talk. We laugh. We're rebuilding something. It's not what it was before. It's something new, something different. But it's ours. Patricia is coming too. She and my daughter are friends now. They text each other. They go to lunch sometimes. It's strange and beautiful how pain can create connections. I'm wearing a new dress today. Not the navy blue one with white polka dots. I donated that one to the church. This one is yellow, bright yellow. The color of sunshine and hope and new beginnings. I'm 50 years old. I've been widowed twice. I've lost almost everything I owned. I've been betrayed by family. I've been called a liar and confused and crazy. I've been broken down to almost nothing. But I'm still here. I'm still standing. I'm still fighting. I'm still hoping. I'm still loving. And if you're reading this, if you're going through something similar, if you're sitting in a chair wearing a dead husband's sweater and thinking there's no way out, I want you to know something. There is a way out. You can fight back. You can rebuild. You can survive. You are stronger than you know. You are worthy of love and respect and justice. You are not alone. Have you ever been in a situation where your family didn't believe you? Have you ever been exploited by someone you trusted? Do you know someone going through this right now? Tell your story. Share this video. Help this message reach someone who needs to hear it. Because every time we speak up, we break the cycle of silence. Every time we stand up, we give someone else the courage to do the same. Like and subscribe if this story touched you, if it helped you, if it gave you hope. Let's build a community of survivors who refuse to stay silent. Let's make sure the next person who goes through this knows they're not alone. We are here. We are strong. We are unbreakable. And we will not be silenced.